everybody. My name is Juan Sagarna from Spanish Agri-Food Cooperatives, and we are part of the team that are going to drive this webinar session about decarbonization in dairy sector, together with my colleagues in the backstage, Susana and Aurora. So welcome everybody, and following the agenda, we have some words for opening from Giovanni Guarnieri, that he's the Milk and Dairy Working Party chairman in COPA-COGECA. So Giovanni, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Morning to everybody. As chairman of the COPA-COGECA Milk and Dairy Working Party, I have the honor to open this morning. A few words. The world and the European Union are experiencing a shifting in environmental policies influenced by geopolitical uncertainties such as Russian war in Ukraine, the ongoing impact on the COVID pandemic, increasing concerns about food and nutrition security, accelerating biodiversity loss, and the efforts on climate change. In those turbulent times, a shift of course have occurred in Brussels institutions, where economic priorities and urgent need for stable, affordable supply food chain have gained prominence in the EU discussion. The economic and social aspect of sustainability have been revised by EU decision makers. We have to remember that in September 2023, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced a structured dialogue with the agricultural sector involving also the COPA-COGECA institutions, acknowledging the lack of transparency and stakeholder involvement in the Green Deal's implementation, which had been driven by a top-down approach. Persistent calls for science-based impact assessment policy approach have been made some progress. However, it was the widespread farmers' protest in early 2024 that prompted a reevaluation, leading to suspension of the key Green Deal initiative by the European Commission, Parliament and Council. Food system demands an approach that integrates social, legal, economic, environmental, financial, ethical, and philosophical in consideration into future research and innovation policies and programs. In this context, the dairy industry plays a major role, and the cooperatives in particular. The entire dairy supply chain worldwide recognizes the importance of sustainability in the dairy sector. While the sector contributes to nutrition and diet health, it also affects climate change, animal welfare, biodiversity, and soil fertility. An increasing number of dairy companies plans to become net zero in the future. In doing so, measures on farm plays a crucial role in reaching targets, but often rise costs for farmers. And this is a critical point. It is crucial that not only farmers and companies participate in this process, but the entire supply chain, which means adopt a more comprehensive approach and comply to the greenhouse gases protocol definition of scope 3, that I remember here, that take into account not only the direct and indirect greenhouse gases of the industry, but all the indirect emissions, such as production of purchased materials, fuel, services, etc. Addressing scope 3 emission in the dairy sector is essential for reducing the industry's overall GHG footprint and achieving sustainability goals. It requires a comprehensive approach of all the stakeholders across the supply chain, investment in sustainability practices, and leveraging technology for better data comprehension management in order to better tailor emission reduction strategies. Several studies have indicated that the production of livestock, including the stages of growing, transport, processing, and consumption, have relatively large impact on climate change. The EU dairy industry has seen substitutional improvements over the year, in particular in terms of productivity and efficiency of the use of inputs and in the CO emission per kilo of milk produced. The sector, wherever will be the new challenges and opportunities in the future sector, has always shown initiative and programs from many perspectives and can continue to do so. In fact, the sector is committed to continue to contribute the EU GHG emission goals with the help of research and technology. Mitigation options that provide multiple environmental benefits must be favored when considering ways to allow the sector to reduce its influence on climate change. Achieving carbon neutral emission means balancing the amount of CO2 and other greenhouse gases emitted with the equivalent amount sequestrated, resulting in a net zero positive carbon footprint. In dairy farming, these involve multiple disciplinary approach and include many aspects, from animal and farm management, such as soil carbon sequestration practices, through feed and breeding and then genetics, up to manure management and energy. Nowadays, GHG emission being one of the topical discussion at the COP27. However, there are many challenges in calculating a carbon footprint of the dairy sector. One of the greatest in the quantification of overall emission deriving from various sources, such as farms, activities, enteric fermentation, input production. However, as we have seen, exist many activities and practices able to offset and reduce GHG emission at the farm level. Regarding to this, have been developed many tools in order to quantify the true nature of the sector emission and its real impact on the environment. Within these challenges and dynamic scenario, a central role is played by cooperatives. Historically, cooperatives had always played an important role in helping farmers to capture a share of higher value in the food supply chain. Cooperatives create markets or give farmers better market access and improve overall efficiency. One of the main advantages of the cooperative intervention is the ability to leverage economies of scale. Cooperative plays also a fundamental role in promoting sustainability and reducing emission among many producers. Thanks to its structure and ability to aggregate many actors, the cooperative can effectively coordinate interventions to stimulate the transition toward GHG reduction practices. Through the pooled purchase of low GHG emission technologies and services, the cooperative can also reduce initial costs for individual producers, making the necessary investment for sustainability more accessible. This intervention is particularly significant because it allows a tailored support to each single producer, taking into account their size and specific need. Dairy cooperatives are significantly central to sustain development and carbon target goal of dairy downstream sector, as they are mainly intended to empower their members. The cooperative can achieve a much more significant overall reduction in emission than a single farm can achieve only. This collective effect not only improve the environmental efficiency of the entire sector, but also increase awareness and adoption of sustainable practices among farmers. These dairy cooperatives have already taken many measures to stimulate GHG emission reduction, such as determining emission on farmers, establishing sustainability program, and more recently stimulating farms through premium prices and educational programs. For COPA-COGECA, by leveraging those strategies, cooperatives not only help individual farmers transition to sustainable practices, but also contribute to the wider goals of environmental protection, economic resilience, and social equity in the dairy sector. Regarding this aspect, cooperatives represent the only possible form of farm or of market for many disadvantaged rural areas, and this is very important. In summary, the dairy cooperative represents a key player in promoting the transition to more sustainable production model. Through this economic, technical, and managing support, it facilitates the adoption of low environmental impact practices on a large scale, significantly contributing to the reduction of emission. and the overall improvement of this sector's sustainability, even in the areas where it's particularly hard to keep primary activities alive. I hope that all the job of this morning will express the best practices made in place by our most important dairy cooperatives in Europe, and I hope that this morning will help us to have a clear idea of the sustainability points. Thank you.
Oh, thank you to you, Giovanni. Nice words from COPA-COGECA, that you know that it is the main European organization of farmers and cooperatives. Thank you, Giovanni. And so some reports from the European Commission. We have the presence of Valeria Forlin, that represents DG for Climate Action. So, Valeria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I will just make a couple of points to introduce the day, but then I'm just looking forward to hearing, listening to your presentations and learning of everything you're doing. So in February, 2 months, well, already 4 months ago, actually, the Commission published a communication with a recommendation of a climate target for 2040. This climate target is very ambitious. It says that the European Union as a whole could and should reduce emissions by 90% compared to 2005, compared to 1990, and the main effort to achieve this target will be done by the industry, by the energy sector, through renewable energy and electrification of heating, electrification of transport, and in this context, there is also a role to be played, of course, by the agricultural sector, but a much more limited role. In the scenarios, in the models we ran to arrive at this conclusion, the role of the agricultural sector was to reduce emissions by 22 to 30%. So on average, much less than the other sectors, because most of the emissions in the agricultural sector, of course, as you know, come from the livestock sector, from enteric fermentation and from the management of manure. And these emissions are hard to decarbonize. Technologies can help, but can never bring these emissions to zero. So that's why the role of the agricultural sector is more limited than for other sectors. But of course, there is also the other side of the coin that was already mentioned by Giovanni, the fact that the agricultural sector can also sequester carbon in soils and in biomass through agroforestry, for instance. And so all this together was very much put into focus in the communication that was published in February, because if you look at it in a positive way, actually the agricultural sector, with all the removals that it can provide, could be climate neutral already before the rest of the economy. Already before 2040, all the removals that the agricultural sector can provide could compensate for the emissions from agricultural activities. So this was a bit this is a bit the vision that we have for 2040, which is not without challenges. Of course, it's not an easy pathway, but it could be done if there were the right incentives in place, if the positive externalities, the ecosystem services that farmers can provide, could be rewarded through public support or by private sectors. And here I want to note that the first step to reward these ecosystem services is to be able to measure them, because you can only pay for something that you can measure. And so I know that many of you have already been working on approaches to monitor and report and verify greenhouse gas emission reductions or carbon sequestration in agriculture. And also on our side, from the Commission side, we have proposed a framework to harmonize these monitoring systems for carbon farming. So earlier this year, the Parliament and the Council agreed on a law that we proposed 1.5 years ago, called a regulation for a framework to certify carbon removals. And this would be a harmonized framework both for the criteria to say that some carbon removals are of high quality, and on the certification process that farmers can go through to be certified. So all these rules will now be harmonized. We still have actually to write the specific rules, to write the specific methodologies for the certification of carbon farming. And we are already working with an expert group to write the certification methodologies for peatland wetting, for management of agricultural soils, and for afforestation, reforestation. So all this is already relevant for livestock farmers in extensive systems, because it would allow to certify the carbon sequestered in grasslands and in soils. As far as the livestock emissions are concerned, this are coming a bit later, in the sense that there was no agreement between Parliament and Council whether to already start certifying livestock emission reductions now. So the agreement was that the Commission will review in 2026, so in 2 years, whether to include livestock emissions in the scope of the framework. But between now and then, the Commission should already start working on a pilot methodology. So we should already look into the existing approaches to certify livestock emission reductions. And that's why I'm very happy for the webinar today, because we can already learn from what is happening on the ground. And we can build on these methodologies when we work on this pilot methodology in the next months. And then, as the last point, I wanted to link a bit to what Giovanni said before me, that the support must come from the entire supply chain, from the entire agri-food value chain. This is also something we are looking into. It's clear that this common agricultural policy can provide a lot of support to farmers for investment and advisory services and cooperative approaches, but there is also a lot of potential to get finance from private markets, because we already see now today that a lot of food producers, food manufacturers, they make voluntary commitment to show to their customers that their value chain is sustainable, and so they commit to procuring milk or ingredients from farmers that use sustainable practices. And this all comes into the topic of Scope 3 reporting. This is what Giovanni mentioned. They every year they report on all the emissions of their entire supply chain, so all their Scope 3 emissions, and they make efforts to decrease the Scope 3 emissions. So far, this approach is completely voluntary, but one could imagine that if these approaches became more mandatory, then there would be a steady and predictable demand for emission reduction credits, or for the ecosystem services that farmers can produce. So we are looking into a policy for after 2030, where the entire food value chain becomes involved in reducing emissions at the farm level, and financially contributes to this. So on this topic, we already published a study last year. It was published in November, and the title is mitigating agricultural emissions, pricing agricultural emissions along the value chain, and rewarding climate action. So that was a first study that looked into this approach with different design options. But we want to follow up on that study, because it created a lot of interest, and we received a lot of questions about it. So now we will have a series of workshops to discuss more in detail the design and the impacts of such policy approach. The first of these workshops will take place in 2 weeks, on the 19th of June, and participation online is still possible. I think participation in person is not possible anymore, because all seats are already taken. And then we will follow up, so with 5 more workshops in the next year, and that this will be concluded with another study. So I hope you can be involved in this discussion, both for the preparation of the methodology for livestock emission reductions, and for these workshops that we will hold on the policy design post 2030. Thank you.
So thank you, Valeria, and also Giovanni for the opening words. So some more about the rules of this webinar. Right now we have some 200 people registered. So welcome to all of you. We have a tight agenda. So there is no room for questions and answer lively. In any case, we encourage you to use the chat of Zoom for sharing doubts, comments, even to ask anything to the speakers if they are available during the whole session. Please try to reply by them. Also, use it for introduce any relevant information that you consider. Valeria, if you can include the link for those interesting seminars that you are going to hold, you can use the chat. This session will be recorded and uploaded in the YouTube channel of Cooperativas Agro-alimentarias de España, Spanish Agri-Food Cooperatives, but also in the web homes of our organization and in the project homes of the Repair and Visionary, that are the projects that are supporting these actions. We will have in after some presentation about those landmark projects. So it is the time for know more about real and specific actions from our dairy cooperatives. And I have the pleasure to present you John Brosnan. Please put your camera on. Thank you, John. And he works for our colleagues of Irish cooperatives, and he will drive the next panel. So, John, the floor is all of yours.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you for having me here this morning. I'm joining you, as Juan said, from Ireland, so good morning from here, and thanks to everybody for coming online. It sounds like there's a lot of people online here to listen to what everybody's got to say. So we have a very distinguished and interesting panel of speakers coming up for you here this morning to give you their own unique perspectives from their own individual organizations, and of course the industry more broadly, as well as their own respective countries that they come from. I've been told that each speaker has strictly 7 to 8 minutes, and as Juan said there, if you do have questions for the speakers, feel free to use the chat function. We won't be able to answer them live, as Juan said, in terms of answering them verbally. We will be able to hopefully answer them in the chat function on the bottom of your screen, so please do use that. I think that the scene was very well set this morning by both Giovanni and indeed Valeria in their introductory remarks, and we've heard so far about the policy and consumer-led drivers in sustainability, and in particular in Giovanni's comments there on challenges in achieving Scope 3 emission reductions. But much is being done on that front, and this morning we're going to hear a bit about that from each of the individual presenters and what in particular cooperatives are doing to lead this change in dairy decarbonisation. So it's really about cooperative-led strategies in dairy decarbonisation. And again, in Valeria's comments, we heard that there's a role for agriculture in terms of delivering reductions, which can be challenging, but there are opportunities then in sequestering in both carbon, soil and biomass, as we heard from her as well. And very pleased to hear as well about the right supports. I heard both public and private, but I particularly like to hear the comments about public support for ecosystem services and so on into the future. So that's something we all look forward to hearing more detail about into the future. So enough from me. I'm going to introduce our speakers one by one. So first of all, each of our speakers are going to deliver a presentation. And first of all, we're joined by Robert, and forgive my pronunciations here, please do correct me if I do make a mistake on any of the names. Robert Hermoinen, he's the development manager from Valio in Finland. So Robert, the floor is yours for strictly, I'm told, the next 7 to 8 minutes, if you're ready to go.
Yes. Thank you, John, and hello everybody. Can you maybe see my screen?
We can see it, Robert, but put in the presentation mode.
Yes. Yes, now, good. Can you see it in the presentation mode?
Yes, yes.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm glad to be here. Like John said, my name is Robert Harmon, and I come from Finnish dairy house Valio. And first, I would like to say a few words about Valio. So Valio is a Finnish dairy house, and it's owned by 5 cooperatives that are owned by our 3,400 dairy farms. So basically, Valio is 100% owned by dairy farms. So for me, that is really important that we are paying all our profits to the dairy farmers. Then one thing about Valio's climate program is that we have a target to have climate neutral milk chain by 2035, and that is the topic that I'm here to talk about. So Valio's climate program was set up already in 2018, and for us, the baseline year is 2019. So 2019 is the year that we are always comparing our emission mitigation progress annually. So 2019, our emissions were approximately 3 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And by far, we have achieved approximately 17% reduction when we are comparing to 2019 and 2023. So quite a lot of emission reductions already achieved in our value chain. And so in the picture on the left side, you can see the progress, and on the right side, you can see how we are actually predicting that our net emissions are developing until 2035. So below in the image, you can see carbon sequestration, biogas production, biogas usage at traffic sector, and on the top side of the picture, you can see our emissions. So when you look at the picture, there are 2 lines. There are 2 green lines, and the one with dots, that is what we would like to get by 2035. But the green line with no dots is actually what we are predicting to get. So as you can see, by 2035, we are not predicting to be carbon neutral with these current technologies that we have identified. So we are still missing some climate impact mitigation methods in our value chain. We haven't identified all of them. We need some new technologies in order to get to the green line that is with the dots. But so 2035, we would most likely have 0.7 million tons of CO2 equivalent that year. And I think that the predicted progress is really good when you are looking at 2019, which was 3 million tons of CO2 equivalent that year. So what are the actions that we are doing in our value chain to mitigate the emissions? This is really fast go through because of the strict timeline, but there is, for example, renewable energy on Valio level and on farm level. So quite many of our farms are already producing renewable energy, such as biogas or solar energy. And then there is biogas production for traffic sector. So that is something that we are quite heavily focusing on. So we want to use our agricultural biomasses to produce biogas that can replace diesel and gas on the traffic sector, and also in our own milk trucks. Then there is soil emission reductions especially on peatlands, which we have here in Finland. So organic peatlands that are causing fossil emissions annually. We want to reduce those emissions. Then we also want to sequestrate carbon into our mineral soils. So Finnish dairy production is heavily specialized in grass production, so we can actually sequestrate carbon into our mineral soils. Then there is animal welfare, animal feeding innovations, and animal breeding. So those actually can have quite a lot of impact on the carbon footprint of our milk. So that is also something that we have lots of studies and projects going on. Yeah, that is basically about the technologies that we are using to go to carbon neutrality. But like I said, this was really fast to go through. So if I had more time, I could be more specific. But one important thing when we are looking into these technologies is not only about the impact of individual emission mitigation technologies, but we also need to consider how we are actually implementing those technologies in practice. So how we are doing that in Valio, first thing is that we need to educate our farms that climate efficient doesn't mean inefficient dairy production, but those things, climate efficient and efficient production, most likely walk hand in hand. So for example, less waste means less inputs and perhaps higher amount of product, so higher sales. Carbon farming, so sequestrating carbon into soil, that actually means higher yields with smaller inputs. So that is efficient for the farmers as well. So we need to educate our farms. Some actions actually give profitability boost for dairy production. Such technologies are, for example, biogas production. So you have smaller manure storage emissions, smaller fertilizer production emissions, and you actually need less chemical fertilizers. So the fertilizer bill of the farmer is smaller than currently. Of course, some of the climate actions bring additional costs, and as agriculture is not a money-making machine, these costs need to be compensated somehow. So at Valio, we have implemented this so-called voluntary sustainability bonus in spring 2023. So already 1 year of operation for this voluntary sustainability bonus. And this means that when farmers are doing certain climate actions from the list that we have, they're getting bonus for the price of milk. So for example, if they are using Bouvard green up, this feed additive that can mitigate the methane emissions from dairy production, they get certain amount of money, and that is how we're compensating. The maximum amount is currently 2 per liter of milk, so they can choose several climate actions, and the total maximum is 2 Sounds really small, but for a farm of 120 cows, that is actually 26,000 euros annual boost for their milk money. So that is really important for the farms. Then, of course, this is for Valio. This is costly. We are compensating to the farms, so we have to find a way how to get more money from the dairy market, and we are actually looking into new business models where we can sell these climate efficient products and get more money from the market. And yeah, that is my time. So thank you for your interest and for your time, most of all.
Thank you, Robert, for an excellent presentation, and thank you for sticking to the time as well. Some excellent points there, and congratulations to your team and the work done to date on the, your 17% reductions there from 2019 to present underlines the importance of measuring what we are doing and demonstrating that as well. And I think that's very good. And your sustainability bonus there of 2 cents per litre certainly is very, very attractive. And my congratulations to you and your team on what you're doing and continued success there.
Thanks.
So moving swiftly onwards, our next speaker is Raquel Lopez. She is Transformation Manager at Central Lechera, Asturiana in northern Spain. So I believe we have a pre-recorded video from Raquel. If it's ready to go there, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Raquel Lopez, Transformation Director in Central Lechera Asturiana SAT, a dairy cooperative site in Asturias, the north of Spain. Before starting my presentation, I would like to thank the Spanish cooperatives, especially Susana and Juan, for the invitation to participate in this webinar, and also my apologies for not being able to join the live event. Hope you have a nice webinar. So let me quick share my screen. I have a short presentation here. Okay, hope you can see it now. I would like to start briefly explaining that Central Lechera Asturiana Group has the commitment to become carbon neutral in 2030. And I'm going to explain you the strategies that from the farming perspective, we are working on as a cooperative. Central Lechera Asturiana SAT has the purpose to guarantee the future of the members, the farmers, by giving them the necessary support to make their livestock farms profitable, efficient, and sustainable. So according to that, we are working daily with them to support, to give them the support they need to not only adjust to the new company strategies, but also the new regulatory needs. So we are basing our strategy in three main axes, which are circular economy, sustainable and family farms, and obviously environmental commitment. About circular economy, I would like to highlight Biogastur, which is our biogas plant. You can see it there in the picture. It is as well site in Navia in Asturias, and it's been under 100% cooperative control since 2021. And the process is represented in the scheme you have in the upper right position of screens, which consist basically in we collect the manure from the farms in the reception tank. Then we have the 4 digesters where we mix the manure, like 70% manure, 30% other materials that came from food industry. After the digestion process, we get from one side the biogas that we are using now to produce electricity. But by the end of the year, we will purify it to get biomethane. Then we get the solid part of this mix of manure that it's given back to the farmers in a solid way, and as it can be used as organic fertilizer or bedding material for the cows. You have a picture just there. And the liquid part that is that goes to the treatment plant that we have already also in Biogastur. Last year, we did a calculation to know the reduction in GHG gases related with this gestion of the manure, and we found out that those farms that give to Biogastur the manure have an in average 11% of reduction in the carbon footprint in the farms. So it's a quite interesting number, and also, well, for now, this service is volunteer for the farmers. We don't have any bonus for use it. It is true that we have an important volume increase from 2022 to 2023. You can see it in the table there, but as I mentioned, for now, it is volunteer. We have around over 90 farms that are using this service, and we don't have any bonus. The second project or the second service I would like to mention is what we call Class Energía, which is another important project for us that started in 2011 as an agreement with an energy distributor to buy the needed energy for all the farms with a better economic conditions and also the certified renewable origin. We currently have here around 30% of our farmers, so around 500 farms in this service. Also, since 2022, we open another leg, let's say, in this service that consists in the installation of a photovoltaic plant in the farms. You have a real picture there. Till now, as this project work really slow due to there is grants in the process of installation, and as well the installation is quite complex. We have in place till now 12 plants in 12 different farms, and we have 40 waiting for the installation. As well, this service is volunteer for all the farmers. They can ask for a grant for payment the plant installation, but there is no bonus coming from the cooperative to add to this service. Some innovation projects are reflected here. I would like to highlight two of them, just to be quick and don't pass my time. One of them is the carbon footprint calculation in the animal feeding. We developed together with True Nutrition a calculator, not only for the footprint of the concentrates we are selling to the farmers, but also a calculator that includes the silage and forage that are produced in the farms and that are as well included in the cows' diet. We do have a nutrition bonus. I mean, all the farmers that are included in the nutrition service with Class has a bonus in the payment of the milk, because we understand that we are optimize the protein consumption of the diets. So that means that there is an important emission reduction in the farms. Another innovation project I would like to mention, which is quite new for us, but I think it has a long-term strategy that can be put in place, is the inventory we have from all the farmers related with their surface, not only agricultural surface, but as well forest surfaces. So we collect all the data from all the farmers to find potential areas suitable to implement forestry projects or reforest. It is a pleasure for me to say that next month we will reforest 8 hectares on a farmer property which suffered last year a fire. So it's as well important to mention here that we have local, from the local government, we have grants to establish these new trees, this new forest. And apart from that, we are going to pay the farmers for the carbon credits that this new forest will generate. So we are talking about an extra payment separate from the milk production, but that it's of course really interesting for both the farmers and as well the company to compensate the carbon footprint. Regarding the mechanisms we have to encourage the farmers for the participation, and just to sum up my presentation, as I mentioned, we don't have now any specific sustainable bonus, let's say, in the milk payment, but we have the bonus for the nutrition service, and the rest of initiatives for now are volunteer. It's true that we are daily doing a strong effort to communicate all this initiative, and step by step keep increasing the number of farmers that we have in each project, in each service. And well, I think that's all from my side. I hope I don't use more time than needed. I would like as well, and again, to thank Spanish cooperatives, and also please, if you have any question related with any of our projects or initiative, just send them the questions, and for sure I will answer them. Hope you have a nice webinar, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks to Raquel there for her presentation. Again, some very interesting initiatives and innovations outlined in her presentation. So moving onwards, next up from right here in Ireland, we have Enda Buckley. Enda is Head of Sustainability down at Carbery Cooperative in Cork. Again, an organisation I'm very, very familiar with, and are doing some very good work, some very positive work in terms of dairy decarbonisation and sustainability. So Enda, if you are ready to share your presentation, yeah, it's just showing up there now. If you want to put it in presenter mode, we are good to go. Thanks, Enda. It's over to you.
Okay, I'll keep going. So thanks, John. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me. So yeah, Carbery, just maybe to start, we're Carbery Group. So we're based in Southern Ireland. So what you can see there from the screen, we're founded in 1965, fully farmer owned. So we've 1,180 dairy farmers own the company. The company also has a flavors division, so that's why there's a global footprint. So with manufacturing bases in America, Brazil, Italy, UK, Indonesia, Malaysia. So that's a flavors company, but all of the operations here in Ireland are dairy. Revenue last year, you can see there, 616 million. We reduced our carbon emissions last year across the group by 5.27%, which we were very happy with. And we have customers now in over 50 countries. So that just gives you a feel for Carbery, which, as I said, is based here in West Cork in Southern Ireland. So look, I guess for the ask around the presentation was to give you a feel, I suppose, for our ambition and approach with regard to sustainability, and maybe particularly a deep dive into our decarbonisation efforts. So look, these are our group ESG targets. We set these last year. We set our new group strategy last year. And I suppose the first thing to say here is we're signed up to science-based targets. So science-based targets provides a clearly defined pathway for companies to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And ultimately, with science-based targets, you're limiting global warming potential to 1.5 degrees pre-industrial levels. So for us, for scope 1 and 2, that's a reduction of 4.2% annually. For scope 3, it's 3%. And you can see there, we have an ambition to be net zero for scope 1 and 2 by 2035, and for scope 3 by 2043. In line with that, then we have an annual energy reduction of 3%. That's out to 2026. We'll redefine that. It's a similar reduction for water. We have a 50% reduction in waste to landfill. The baseline year for that was 2020. This is an interesting one in biodiversity. We are carrying out, I suppose, extensive biodiversity habitat mapping on all our farms. We plan to complete that by 2027. Future proof, I've got a slide on, that's our sustainability bonus. That's the next slide. I'll speak to that in a second. A big thing for us here in Carbery as well is paying a leading milk price. That's very, very important. We think that's proper sustainability, looking after our farmer shareholders. So that's something Carbery has done for the last 25 to 30 years, paying a leading Irish milk price. In terms of the social piece, there's developing community outreach plans, and we also have health and safety metrics, and there's lots more as well in the social elements, but I won't get into those this morning. So just to talk about future proof. So this is our sustainability bonus program. We launched this in 2022, and I suppose we had lots of workshops with our farmer suppliers on this. We wanted to make sure this had real impact, and we wanted to see real uptake as well at farm level. And we went for 4 areas as part of this program initially. Water quality is a big item in Ireland. We're one of the few countries that have a nitrates derogation. Being blunt about it, that's under pressure because of water quality. So we are really pushing the boat out in terms of trying to protect and enhance water quality. So we have a measure on this. We have specific advisors that go to farms, and they tell the farmer and advise the farmer as to how he can mitigate water quality. Milk recording is a pretty basic one, but we've had low levels of uptake in Ireland up to recently, and that really is an enabler. And that would just be for another year. I think we would take milk recording out of this. Economic breeding index is all to do with breeding, and there's lots of science here in Ireland, particularly from Teagasc, who are the National Food and Safety Authority here, showing that if you breed cows with a high EBI, they will produce less methane over their lifetime. They're much more efficient. They produce higher solids as well. They're better for an Irish base, which is obviously our system is very grass-based. So we are promoting our farmers to use sours with high EBI. And the other measure there is protected urea. Typically, the chemical fertilizer of use across, I think in Europe as well, would have been CAN, calcium ammonium nitrate. We're encouraging our farmers to switch to a product called protected urea, which is a much lower nitrous oxide and ammonia output. So we've been very encouraged with this, and you can see there the bullet points at the end. So for phase 1, we saw 96% uptake, which basically the farmers got half a cent per litre for that. And phase 2 was last year, and we were really blown away with the uptake. I mean, our board felt if we get to 60% of farmers doing this, we'd be very happy. You can see 84% of our farmers did this last year. So we paid out 4.7 million euros. Works out at about 5,500 euros for the average farmer. So it's decent, and we're very encouraged, and this will continuously evolve. These are the measures that currently we already are planning about next year and the measures we will have in there. So it's just a good way, we find, to incentivize farmers to actually, have sustainability action on farm. The other thing I'm going to speak about this morning, and I'd love to speak all morning this, but is a project called Farm Zero C. And this is ambitious. So our plan here is we're basically developing a climate neutral dairy farm. And it's big by Irish standards. This is on a 250-acre farm with 250 cows. And you ask what's climate neutral as opposed to carbon neutral. I suppose it's not just a focus on carbon. There's a big focus as well on biodiversity, on air quality, on water quality. So it's a very holistic approach. And again, I haven't got much time this morning, but there's a whole host of partners involved. Lots of academic institutions here in Ireland. We're working very closely with Orbic, but also technological partners. And again, we've got some European partners involved. So very ambitious project. And it's just to give you a feel for the approach. So I guess life cycle analysis underpins the whole project. We have to look at all the inputs, all the outputs, and we have, a team looking at that. Animal emissions, Robert touched on it earlier. Methane, for example, in terms of the Irish system, enteric rumination is 53% of the farm's emissions. So that's something we have to crack. And we're looking at things like feed additives and all other kinds of technology there. Breeding and animal health, soil and grassland, renewable energy, which funnily enough, actually, will in our system, and it's only about 3% of the emissions. It's quite small. Grass biorefining and AD, and we've got We got granted recently for a €3 million integrated grass biorefinery in AD, so we're going to have that on the farm. Biodiversity, like I said, is very, very important to the project, and we've got some really good quick wins on that. And water and air quality, very, very, very important. So I haven't got much time this morning, right? But I decided to put this one up. So in terms of the decarbonisation on the farm, it's been encouraging. So look, I suppose we are lucky in Ireland to have a grass-based system. So the farm was starting from a low base. So you can see there, just to explain this chart. So the green bars is the carbon footprint of the farm expressed in kilos of CO2 in fat protein corrected milk. So you can see there on the left, you have 2018 going all the way to 2023. The orange bar is looking at sequestration at a low level. So that's including sequestration at a low level. And then the blue bar is looking at the carbon footprint of the farm with a high level of carbon sequestration. So we've been measuring sequestration on the farm now for nearly 3.5 years. So we've got like satellite chromatography, we have a seaflux tower, we've taken hundreds of soil samples. So we've built up a really good knowledge and base of the farm. And it takes time, I think, as anyone that knows with soil, this will take more time, but we certainly, we're very encouraged at this stage that the farm is going to be on the high level because of the mineral soil on the farm. So we're confident that we're going to be certainly in that blue bar territory. But you can see already, even not looking at the sequestration, the farm has reduced its footprint by 27%. So as of the back end of last year, the carbon footprint of the farm stood at 0.63 kg of CO2 fat protein corrected milk. And if you then bring in that high level of sequestration, that level comes down to 0.37. So we're getting to numbers which obviously are very, very encouraging. We also have 10 farms attached to this particular farm. They're called replicator farms. So these are the early adopters, and they are basically everything that's working on the farm, they're applying those to their farm. So that's a good way of disseminating the message as well. So that's it, John. I know we're kind of tight in time, but they're my slides, and yeah, I'll leave it over to you.
Very good, Enda. Thanks very much. And as you said, you could talk forever on that project, and it's one I'm very familiar with. So I would encourage be watching here this morning to check out Farm Zero C and what Carbery do in greater detail. It's very, very innovative. It's cooperative led, and as Enda said, you know, they involve farmers in the design of what they do, and those replicator farms prove on shall we say everyday commercial farms that these measures are very, very doable. And again, I suppose that emphasis there that the sustainability piece is not just about the environmental, it's about the economic and social as well, and that's in common with what Robert said earlier on this morning. It's very important to reward farmers for what they are doing in terms of climate and biodiversity, and again that broader approach to not just being the carbon piece, it's the greater ecosystem services approach. So thanks again, Enda, for that presentation, and I know we're tight on time, so we'll move very swiftly along, and we're joined by Sébastien Serrier from France. Sébastien is the Director of Research and Innovation at Sodiaal. And Sébastien, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody, and good evening for some. I'm very happy to share with you the Sodiaal decarbonization roadmap. So I'm Sébastien Serrier, and responsible for the milk production research at Sodiaal. So some key points on Sodiaal. You can pass the first slide, please. I don't know. Yeah, thank you. So Sodiaal is a cooperative owned by 16,000 farmers. So it represents 9,000 farms. So approximately 20% of the French farm belongs to Sodiaal. And we collect 4.3 billion liters of milk each year. So as all of you, we are accelerating our ecological transition, and we put three main objectives on the decarbonization strategy that were approved by the SBTi 2 years ago, I think. So very quickly, some objectives for the scopes 1 and 2. We We want to reduce 50% of our GHG emissions between 2019 and 2030. And you have in the slide the step in 2023 last year. So we have a diminution of 21% of this scope. The scope 3, it's more challenging, and our objective is to reduce 30% of our GHG emission. And more deeply, we have another goals per liter of milk with 20% reduction. So very, very straight and very difficult objective to achieve. Now, with the next slide, I can explain to you our 4 steps strategy to reduce our climate footprint at farm level. I will not enter into the detail and which solution will be tested, but only on the 4 steps. If you can come back to the last slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So 4 steps plan. The first one is measure. Data are keys to achieve our strategy. We must have the accurate measurement and data at the starting point to know where we begin, and at the end point where to be sure that we achieve our goals. So data and measure are keys. And I give you an example of one tool that we use named Self-CO2 in France. It's a self-diagnosis made by our farmers, and it will give them the carbon footprint of their farm. So we have a lot of farmers that were included in this tool, and we expect to have 100% of the farmers that will do this self-diagnosis next year. The second step is to use the material levers we have in the market to reduce and sequestrate the carbon. So we have another tool for that named Cap de Zero in France. This is a deeper tools, more than self-CO2, to have the accurate carbon footprint on the farm. And more interestingly, you have an individual action plan after this audit, this questionnaire, and you have some action to do in the 3 or 5 years to come to reduce your carbon footprint. So this is the second step. The first step is very important and very difficult way is to test new solutions. There is a lot of solutions are arriving in the market, and we have to ensure that we will have no issues on farm, on milk quality, and on dairy products. So a lot of things to test, and for that we create a farm pilot network last year, include 15 farms, and we expect to have 50 farms in 2026. One thing to say, maybe it's specific for France and more, it's more right for Sodiaal, that we have in France a lot of range and a lot of variety of farm typology. You can produce milk in a lot of ways in France, and we have a lot of different landscape and a lot of different farm typology. So we need to have a toolbox of solutions. No, we are sure that it will not have, we will not have one solution for all. So we need a toolbox. We have a lot of solutions, so it means a lot of tests to do. Finally, the last step is the value. There will be not change in our farm without additional value for them. So very important things to value the efforts. So for that, we have 2 examples right now. It's we launched this year the first French sustainability bonus based on two things: the GHG reduction and the biodiversity actions. And the interesting thing is it will value not only the future improvements on farm, but as well the past and the present action. So all of the farmers will be concerned by this bonus. The other one example is the label Bas Carbone. It's a French initiative that rewards the generating carbon credits at farm level. So today, more than 300 Sodiaal farmers are in this system, and we are able to sell some carbon credits outside Sodiaal and add value for them. So this is the map of Sodiaal for the reduction of our carbon footprint. It's very summarized, so if you have some question, don't hesitate to contact us after this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thanks again for sticking to time, and excellent presentation there. And I think your proactive approach there, having an individual action plan for farms is very interesting, and that idea of testing new and innovative solutions on commercial farms is very interesting as well. It's indicative of that positive cooperative relationship with members and how vital that is, and how vital cooperatives are in the sustainability transition, and again on your sustainability measures and label Bas Carbone as well, which we have certainly I've heard of here in Ireland as well. We're watching that with great interest too. So well done again on all of your work, and yet another positive example of what the cooperative dairy sector are doing to meet sustainability challenges. So next we have Ruth Leary. Ruth is Head of Strategy and Engagement at Agri NZ. So Agri NZ, I'll let Ruth introduce exactly what it is, but it's not exactly a cooperative, but plenty of cooperative involvement within it. But a very, very innovative approach to financing sustainability measures, and in particular decarbonisation of the dairy sector, and particular challenges that the industry faces. So that very innovative model, I think, would be of great interest to everybody here. So Ruth, good evening to you, I should say, in New Zealand, and over to you.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou, everybody, and good evening. Can you see my slides I'm sharing?
Yes, we can, Ruth, yeah.
You can, fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning to you. It's evening for me. I'm really happy to be here, and as John said, I work as Head of Strategy and Engagement at Agri New Zealand. So I'll get into explaining what we are. We're actually a world first public-private partnership between the New Zealand government and a number of our major agribusiness companies within New Zealand. So we're effectively been specifically set up to secure the future of our agriculture industry by investing to help our farmers reduce their emissions whilst maintaining their profitability and productivity, which is really important. Agriculture is foundational to the New Zealand economy. We export over 80% of our merchandise exports last year were from agriculture, and a huge chunk of that is from dairy. So just to show you, this slide is who's involved so far. The private sector businesses, including a number of cooperatives, which I've highlighted in red, Fonterra being probably the most well-known in New Zealand's biggest company and by far our biggest exporter. Those companies make financial contributions to Agri Zero, and then the government match those contributions dollar for dollar. And the money effectively comes to Agri Zero, and we're an investment fund specifically investing in tools and technology for farmers to use to reduce livestock emissions on farm. Fonterra has around 10,000 farmers in New Zealand supplying them, and through the whole group of our shareholders, including the government, but also the agribusinesses, the banks that you can see, there's around 50,000 farmers in New Zealand that are in touch with Agri Zero, which is quite powerful for us when we think about implementing the new tools and technology that we're investing in. So our ambition is quite specific, and that is to ensure farmers in New Zealand have equitable access to affordable and effective solutions to reduce specifically biogenic methane and nitrous oxide emissions. And we're supporting a 30% reduction by 2030 and a near zero target by 2040. And this is actually intentionally significantly more, it's much more aggressive than the New Zealand government's, and that's intentionally so, because actually protecting our trade and offering product and exporting product that the market wants, which is lower emissions product, is what we need to do. And it makes it a special challenge in New Zealand. We are already a very efficient producer of agricultural products, of milk in particular, and we're also pasture-based farming predominant. So finding tools and technology specifically for that type of farming system is a challenge. So all of our shareholders, including the cooperatives I mentioned and Fonterra for one, have effectively formed together, talked to the government and set up Agri Zero as an investment fund for the specific purpose to reduce methane and nitrous oxide, and have also collaborated on the projects that we are working on. So at our setup, they effectively handed over all of the work they'd been doing internally, and now Agri Zero is the vehicle for the New Zealand agribusinesses to reduce emissions. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about the approach that we're taking. We do need to have a range of solutions for farmers, and we know to hit or to get anywhere near our target, which is ambitious, we'll need to have at least 2 or 3 tools for farmers to use in widespread use by 2030, and at least 2 or 3 becoming available over the next few years. You can see on the slide, we have a big section showing there for unknowns. And the reason for that is we're actually seeing such a lot of innovation in the space, particularly for methane, as the world is sort of opening up to the opportunity for climate, but also the market opportunity for reducing methane. So we're learning about new things all the time. We travel the world and scan the globe specifically for anything on the enteric methane and nitrous oxide, and have a sort of a market canvas database that we keep updated. So some of the key considerations are, you know, what's the ease of fit into the New Zealand farming system? A bit like Ireland, we're trying to find things that suit a lower input system. And actually globally, if you think about methane production, nearly 80% of it is in a more extensive grazing, more pasture-based farming system. So we hope we can pioneer here in New Zealand, and we can actually take some of those learnings elsewhere around the world and have a bigger impact too. We need to invest in things with high efficacy levels to support our goals. So something that's sort of 2 or 3% reduction is probably not going to move the needle. And that's talking, you know, right at the start at sort of lab and then animal trial stage. And ideally, we're looking for something that's got productivity advantages, or at least productivity neutral, because we know that's a key lever for adoption for farmers. We also have catalysts. So we have venture capital funding. We're investing equity into promising technology, promising companies that are developing tools and technology. We also have catalyst funding, and that's really the system-wide infrastructure and unblocking spending that we're doing. And so far, Agri Zero has been running since February 1st last year, so just over a year old. We've made a number of investments, and I'll read them out to you, and you can hear that they are actually quite focused on that pasture-based system. So we have invested, our first investment was a slow release bolus technology aiming for 6 months release profile of an inhibitor compound. That's a New Zealand business. We've invested in 2 separate methane vaccine efforts. One led out of the USA, actually headed by a Kiwi, and the other effort has been coming from New Zealand since 2007. We're just spinning out a specific venture for that vaccine at the moment. We've invested in a slower release probiotic enzyme, a novel product out of the USA. And we've also invested in a ryegrass. It's a novel treatment using UV light that actually increases the lipid content in the ryegrass, which is about 70% of the pasture on New Zealand farms. And increasing the lipid content can help productivity, but it also can reduce the emissions quite significantly. Additional to that, we have invested quite a lot in a small molecule inhibitor research program. So many of you heard of Bovea, which is very, very effective, but in New Zealand, because our animals are just coming in to the shed and being able to be fed twice a day maximum, then an inhibitor that is quite a short-acting one and needs to be eaten in every mouthful is not as effective. So that is us. Hopefully that was a little insight into what we're doing over here in New Zealand, and happy to take any questions now or afterwards.
Thank you, Ruth. And that's a good reminder, actually, just to remind everybody that there is an opportunity to ask questions in the chat function. So if you want to ask Ruth a question or ask any of the panelists a question, just pop a question into the chat and direct it to the panelist in question, and hopefully they'll be able to answer your question for you. Ruth, an excellent presentation there. The whole public-private partnership concept is an excellent one, particularly in unblocking that innovation spend, I suppose, and it's a really, really focused strategy on methane and nitrous oxide reduction again, which is very positive. I mean, when you see such a focus on a particular challenge or a particular aspect of the sustainability challenge, then you're going to see results, and again focusing on the ones that are going to have the greatest impact, and also the ones that are going to have hopefully an economic impact for farmers as well. And as you said, that's going to also help adoption at the farm level. So thanks once again, Ruth, and it's a shame we don't have more time to chat, because I can see we're already over time. Another time, yeah. Certainly there will be another time. Thank you, Ruth. So moving on, we have from Arla in Denmark, we have Hanne Sondergaard. She is Executive Vice President of Agriculture, Sustainability and Communications. And I think once again, unfortunately, Hanne cannot join us here live this morning, but I believe we have a pre-recorded presentation from Hanne, if it's ready to go. Susanna, thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Hanne Sondergaard. I'm very pleased to take part in this important conversation today and share some of the work that's going on our farms every day. I'm going to share with you the targets that we have in Arla that we're working to, the actions that are going on our farms, but also how we are encouraging our farms and motivating our farms and transform their farm for the future. I hope that this will give you a sense of how we are working to also contribute to the important targets for the EU. And obviously with the election around the corner, we hope that the conversation that we have together around these important topics can also continue after the election. So let me talk a little bit about Arla Foods. First of all, we are a cooperative owned by just under 8,000 farmers. We have a very clear focus on producing high quality nutrition products from our milk, and obviously with a lower and lower impact as our program that we are working to is taking effect. So sustainable product with a high nutrition to consumers around the world is where we sit. So how are we working with making our products more sustainable? First of all, this journey started for Arla Foods many years ago. So back in 2008, we started our first strategy around this. Already then we had a smaller team starting to work with how do we measure climate at farm level, which meant that in 2020 we could start rolling that out across all of our farms. To start this journey, we needed some clear targets, and that's why we set our first science-based target in 2019. I think we were one of the first companies to do so in our sector and industry. And since that first target, we've actually increased the target already on scope 1 and 2, so that we are compliant to the 1.5 degree ambition that we need globally. So it means that we have a target on scope 1 and 2 to reduce by 63% from 2015, and on scope 3 we have an ambitious target to reduce by 30% by 2030. These targets is what we work to, and we believe that they are very much in line with also the ambition that is in the EU for agriculture. So how do we work with this? It starts with data. And the first part of our journey is what we call Farm Ahead Check. So this is a climate check that happens at farm level. We incentivize our farmers to collect the data that we need, just over 220 data points on each farm. And this also means that we have one of the largest set of data on dairy farming globally, because we've been doing this now since 2020 every year. Verified data at farm level. So that's a big foundation for us. And with that in place, what we could do in 23 was to launch a Farm Ahead incentive program. And here our farmers are taking up to 500 million euros of their milk price and investing it out on the farm that are taking the most action. It's a point-based system, and the farmers can earn points, and for every point they earn, they get a payment of 0.03 euro cent. So it means that the max that a farmer can get in payout right now is up to 2.4 euro cent per liter of milk. So those are big numbers at farm level. The way you can earn points, as you see to the right on this slide, is either on KPIs, where you need to have high performance, or action that you can take now that you can also earn points on. So this is our Farm Ahead incentive, and it's that's really driving action at farm level when we combine financial and climate at farm level. The next step that we have then taken is to bring our customers with us on this journey, because for us to make this journey sustainable, we also need to bring money into the pool and back out to farmers to pay for some of the investments that they need to do. And we are now seeing our customers coming on board. So they pay a higher price for milk. That's part of our program, which brings money into the program. We call this the Farm Ahead Customer Partnership, and there are two parts to it. One is that customers get claimable reductions to deliver on their targets, and they also can participate with us in projects, and they are doing that, to mature levers for the future so that we can continue our journey also after today and tomorrow. Now, we are very happy with this program. I think when we step back, we see already now over the last 2 years reductions on farm by close to 1 million tons of CO2. That's a big number. We are 8,000 farmers, but it's an important number, and it's an important contribution to our journey and also to the journey of the EU. Will we stop here? No, we will not. There are big opportunities for us to also look into the wider sustainability agenda, nature, biodiversity, regenerative agriculture, and so on. And we have projects going on that now that we will try and bring into this journey as we move forward. And hopefully we will get a chance to also share some of that work as we are getting ready to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Hannah for her excellent presentation. 1 million ton reduction in CO2 certainly is very, very impressive. And again, that very robust science-based approach to what they're doing, and incentivizing it there with the maximum 2.4 cent per litre sustainability bonus, and having a points-based system, which is both action and results-based. So very, very interesting approach there to their particular incentive scheme. So our final speaker this morning, I think we're running just very, very slightly over time. So we're joined by Dr. Simona Caselli, who is president of Granlatte. So Simona, the floor is yours. Good morning.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone, and good evening to our New Zealand colleague. I'm Simona Caselli, I'm president of Granlatte. Now I will share my screen in order to let you understand easier what we do. We are the bigger Italian group in milk producing with Italian property. Granlatte is a cooperative that controls Granarolo. Granarolo is the industrial part, so we have the whole value chain until the consumer. In our, oh, I cannot move it. Oh, here it is. This is our structure. We have 503 Italian farmers and 6 cooperatives. They are all over Italy. Now we bought another cooperative. We merged with another cooperative here in Tuscany. So next year we will need more. This is our collected milk. Since 2013, we are doubling towards 2027 the amount of milk we are collecting. And we have big farmers, but also small one on the mountain. So also on the social point of view, our cooperative is very sensitive. These are our plants production that are all over Italy, depending on some PDO production also. And these are the plants and some trading company we have all over the world, because we are a big exporter group. Why we are engaged in sustainability? For future generations, for consolidating our farms, because investing in sustainability is essential for the resilience and competitiveness, and also for consolidating the reputation of our brand. This is an identitarian choice, so applying certain commitment is part of the association pact, and doesn't mean we are giving some bonus on that. On the other hand, we are planning bonus for the next future, and I will explain it. On the medium and long-term sustainability goals for the entire value chain, we have by 2030 an objective to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 30% per liter of milk, and other goals concerning the other part of the chain, such as reducing energy, water consumption, reducing waste, and reduce plastic in packaging. These are the objectives involving the whole chain. I will not comment on this because I don't have time, and I will stay on the first part, which is the agriculture and farming. Our scheme is based on the sustainability developing goals. So in every part of the value chain, we put together some objectives concerning the various sustainable development goals. Our starting point in our job on reducing emission was to consider the impact of raw milk in dairy farming, how is divided, enteric fermentation, animal feed, farm management, and manure management, and then the impact of the supply chain. 78%, of course, is the milk production, but then we have packaging industry, distribution, and also the product storage at home that has quite a weight. For our approach, we use the dairy sustainability framework in order to stay focused on what is in a way already considered at an international level. So we put together a framework of objectives around the environmental one: greenhouse gases, soil nutrients, waste, water, soil, and biodiversity. Some economic point of view, market development, rural economies, and of course the social ones: working condition, product safety, and animal care. This is our work instruction, which is quite complex. I won't comment that. Then you will see the presentation, and you can study it. But of course, we are addressing greenhouse gases, soil nutrients, soil, water, and biodiversity. All this process means to bring out some indicators and to find the tools to measure them. Then we have a 4-step system now in place. At first, we started analyzing a sample of the conferring farm by geographical location, farm size, milk productivity, breed reared, the type of agronomic management, and the use of renewable energy sources and wastewater management and treatment. Then we measure our carbon footprint, which is in 2021 resulted in 1.5 kilos of CO2 equivalent per liter, which I know is considered low because there are some places where it's 6, but this is our level, and our commitment is to bring it down by 30% towards 2030. Then we achieved in December of last year the APD certification on both the conventional milk and the organic milk. The environmental product declaration, APD, is defined by International Organization for Standardization and is based on life cycle assessment. Now we are in the phase that we are digitalizing every farm, so all the farms of our members, and with this system, with this platform X-Farm, we are to put them not only the normal data concerning the farm, but also all the data that I showed you from the model. At the moment, we are on the animal welfare side using the Classifarm, which is the national system put together by our national ministry. And this is the eco scheme of the CIP. So all our members can bring that money from the CIP. As you can see on drug consumption, we already managed to have a very important result in reduction. Then we developed a system for certifying our animal welfare system, and we developed it with an AEP Agri project financed by Emilia-Romagna region. And we work together with University of Milan and the alma mater in Bologna and the CRPA, which is a specialized research center on animal production. We developed this buon latte system, which give every farmer a positioning based on several indicators, a good mass of indicators. Actually, there are more than 100. And they know how they are in their situation, and then they receive some point of improvement based on the specific situation they have. And then we prohibited fixed housing, so our animals are all free. Then the other part is the biomethane supply chain project, which is very important for manure management, of course. So we put together livestock wastes and manure and slurry from Granlatte, then from Granarolo, which is our industry subproducts, serum, and from CGB, which are beetroot producers. We put together some arable crops, sorghums, and verniz products, and we obtain biomethane on the one end that goes normally in the self-production for our members, and digested that we use, of course, in substituting chemical fertilizers. Our biomethane project, we see the construction of 10 consortium plants over 3 years, located in 4 regions in Italy. They will produce 30 million cubic meters per year of methane. And we will obtain 500,000 tons per year of natural fertilizers, avoiding the emission of 100 tons of CO2 equivalent in the atmosphere. So the benefits are several. You can see them there, not only the reduction of CO2 emission due to manure, but also production of clean energy that is paid to the farmer, the use of digestate produced by biomethane, and the reduction of chemical fertilizer. And thanks to the cooperative, farmers are able to participate in this project that are at a larger scale one, so the single farmer could never join them. At the end, as to biodiversity that I mentioned before, is one of the points we are monitoring. We started a nice project that has obtained already some success. This is developed with CONAPI, which is a bee producer cooperative. So they put the beehives in our farms. The farmer normally will manage to put there some floriferous crops to ensure pollination. And currently we have 350 beehives. We just started in our farm scattered along across Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy, Apulia, and Basilicata, with more than 17 million bees. And we obtained this approved by bees, by CONAPI bees mark that we are putting on our organic milk. So thank you very much for the attention, and thank you for the possibility to speak in this very interesting webinar.
Thank you, Simona, for a very interesting presentation. Again, I'm sorry we don't have time to discuss further. There's a lot of very, very interesting initiatives there. Certainly on a growth trajectory as an organization, whilst answering the sustainability challenges there and taking a very structured approach, you know, with SDG alignment and using the dairy sustainability framework, and there's a lot happening there. You're doing your digital transformation piece at farm level, the biomethane project, again showing the cooperative strength there and cooperative finance and so on, and then animal welfare projects as well. So a lot on your plate, certainly a very full agenda. So congratulations to you and your team and all that you're doing. And all that remains for me is to thank, I see that Juan has appeared, and that is a reminder that I need to exit at this point. We're slightly over time, my apologies for that. But I'd like to thank each and every one of our speakers for their contributions this morning. I think you will all agree that they've been fantastic, and we've gotten something different from everybody there in terms of what they're doing at their own individual organizational level. So the future is bright, and the future is very positive, I think, Juan, and with that, I will hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, John, for your fantastic work. It was not easy to stick to the time due to that the agenda was plenty of initiatives. I'm very proud of the cooperatives. It's so as that there are no greenwashing in their initiatives, but a lot of work and effort at farm level. Okay, so we are going to continue with research and technologies issues. We have two projects that are dealing with problems in the upstream and downstream line of the carbonization process, from the barn to the consumer perception. But we will start with DG Agri, with European Commission. Jean-Charles, thank you for being here. We'll show us at a glance the general situation of European projects dealing with decarbonization in this sector. So, Jean-Charles, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Juan, and thank you for the organizers to have invited me for this interesting webinar. I listened from the beginning of the webinar, and I see that there are many interesting initiatives in many countries, not only in the EU, whether focused on greenhouse gas emissions or more environment, or on additional aspects of sustainability of dairy production. So happy to see this as coming from DG Agri. So I'm Research Policy Officer in the Commission, DG Agriculture and Rural Development, but I work in a unit dealing with research and innovation. So I'm not really a policy maker from this point of view, but really in this unit, we are planning the EU-funded research on agriculture and forestry under the European Union Framework Programme for Research and Development. So I'll try to give you some insight on the European research and innovation projects that are running in this domain. And just to show, sorry, I'm not sure the Wi-Fi system at home, I'm teleworking, will be operational. So I ask if you could share and manage the slideshow on your side.
Yes, okay.
I cannot see. So I'm now in the second slide on what's on the table. I don't see it on my screen, but I guess it's okay. So 4 elements. First, the projects that we fund under the EU research and innovation programs. And you have the links there for future reference if you want to look at this in more details. Then the second is the subgroup on methane emissions in agriculture and their report with recommendation, which was published end of last year as part of the European Union methane strategy. Related to it as well, but with a broader scope, the so-called IMAP wikis, the systematic review of scientific evidence on the impact of the common agricultural policy, not only on climate, but also on environment and sustainability. And at the end, also coming from DG Agri, the common agricultural policy and the options for support for certain measures linked to greenhouse gas emissions. The next slide, please. To start with the EU-funded projects. So the ones I will present are mostly projects that are related to cattle emission mitigation. Of course, if you look at greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture, including cattle, you could go into broader aspects, carbon sequestration in land, even biodiversity to some extent. And I cannot in a few minutes present all of this, so I will focus really on mitigation related projects, mostly at farm level. But if you want to see other interesting projects, if you go back to the previous slide, we have produced fact sheets covering Horizon 2020 and the first years of Horizon Europe. Horizon 2020 was the previous framework program. A number of projects are still going on. And here you have the thematic of the different projects. One is specifically on sustainable livestock production, also one on animal health and welfare, but you have other fact sheets that could be relevant, like one on soil, for instance, or water management. The next slide, please. So if we look at the different projects, here on this slide, you have a non-exhaustive list of projects that look into mostly cattle emission mitigation. And we try to put in the columns by different sub-domains, let's say, what these projects are about. And you see that it goes from diets, feed additives to manure management, breeding and genetic, life cycle assessment, precision livestock farming, and all because we heard about the data. And you can monitor what you can measure, and you can act on what you can measure and demonstrate and review. You need these elements. So the next slides will go, but I have no time to go in details through this, but a snapshot of these certain projects. And this first slide is mostly 3 projects looking at pastures, mainly grazing, where we know that measuring methane emissions is quite challenging. And you have here a number of, let's say, outputs of these projects. To say of these projects I'm presenting here are projects from ERA-NETS, either ERA-Gas or Suzanne, for instance. Some of you may have heard about these, which are networks of national or regional funders, mostly in the European Union, putting money into a virtual pot to organize transnational calls. And they select projects. Usually they are not very large projects, 1 to 1.5 million euros. And these are projects mostly from these. And these ERA-NETS, ERA-Gas, and Suzanne were mostly on sustainable animal production and greenhouse gas emissions from livestock. So these 3 projects remain, for instance, the GrassTech makes use of current or new technologies for accurate measurement of methane, independently from the location of the animal. It's laser-based system, also looking at feeding strategies for grazing, combined to different level of mix feed supplementation that are being tested. I have no time to go through these projects with the level of details that we would need in a few minutes. The next slide is more on projects that mainly deal with manure management, greenhouse gas emissions, and ammonia. For instance, the first one, CCC farming, assess different methods, techniques for emission monitoring and mitigation along the chain, from slurry acidification and injection, separation of urine and feces, respiratory chambers, feeding and breeding experiments, grassland experiments. And the life cycle assessment is also used here for the nutrient cycle assessment for nitrogen and phosphorus, comparing actually 3 different tools. So this is an example of this first one. MELS and M4M models are other types of projects also looking at estimation of greenhouse gas emissions and looking at mitigation technologies. The next slide is more there on let's say, dietary strategies. Sea Solutions, for instance, explores the addition of seaweed to animal diets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from sheep, beef cattle, and dairy cows. And the projects works on a variety of bioactive compounds already used for several applications, anthelmintic, antibacterial, prebiotics, and now for methane emission reductions. And a number, over 70 seaweed and extracts have been characterized, and active ingredients have been made from them. Sedders also followed kind of similar path, investigating different dietary options to reduce methane emissions. Now the last projects on this slide, Farm Sustainable, will only monitor animal feed and behavior, but through precision livestock farming technologies that will to monitor in real time animal health and welfare, animal production, and environmental impact. So the project applies modeling and simulation in combination with data analytic using IoT devices, wireless sensor network, etc. So this is to show in a kind of snapshot the project specifically on essentially cattle greenhouse gas emission reduction or mitigation. Now we have these other projects. I could go much broader if there would be time, but these projects are not essentially from Eranet, and they cover more resilience issues. We heard from the cooperatives before that some are looking at sustainability issue, obviously efficiency and productivity, but also other aspects of sustainability. And here you had projects like resilience for dairy or pathways. Pathways is a Horizon 2020 projects where, among other things, greenhouse gas emission measurement and LCA will be carried out or are being carried out. Same for the project on resilient livestock farming, the re-livestocks, where different breeding strategies are tested, will be tested together with reduction of manure emissions. And more recently, Step Up is, we could say, nearly a kind of follow-up to Pathways. Or Nutritive is a very recent project in the Horizon Europe that was selected and working on manure and various aspects of manure production, processing, storage and use, including health-related issues. Now, these are really from the EU framework programs, Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. Then you have linked to it more on practical implementation, dissemination, information sharing are the EIP Agri-related activities, and the operational groups are funded under the EIP Agri and funded from the Common Agricultural Policy. And I think there are over or around 60 operational groups that work really on greenhouse gas emissions from livestock. So, and these are local initiatives funded from the national plans of the member states to implement the Common Agricultural Policy. So they are kind of pilot, semi, or actually research projects with different actors and stakeholders being involved, not only researchers, but farmers and actors there. Now, going quickly to the two last aspects or the other aspects of the presentation. The subgroup on methane emissions in agriculture, in December 2023, there was an inventory of best practices and available technologies to mitigate methane in agriculture. So a report has been produced. You have a link in the first, nearly the first slide of this presentation, and they looked into enteric methane emissions in manure management and a number of actions and options and measures that we have heard that are being taken by cooperatives we listened to this morning are actually listed here in this report. Obviously, again, there are different livestock systems and no one size fits all. Also in cattle, you have dairy cattle. This is the purpose of this meeting today. You have beef cattle, you have sheep and dairy, you have monogastric, etc. Also consider co-benefits, but it's not only win-win or co-benefit situations. Sometimes there can be trade-offs between different options and between reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other aspects of the sustainability. And of course, the practices have to be implemented and adapted to the local context. So this is for the subgroup on methane emissions in agriculture, available publicly. Now the next slide will look at the broader perspective. So the IMAP is the stands for Integrated Modeling Platform for Agroeconomic and Resource Policy Analysis. It's work commissioned by DG Agri to the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and it is synthesizing a large amount of scientific evidence to assess the impacts of farming practices, not only on greenhouse gas emission, but on the environment, climate, and agricultural productivity. So they looked into this review of farming practices, and it's a wiki system. So you have to look into certain options that you want to look at, certain aspects that you want to look at. It's interactive. And for instance, here you have the different aspects and measures for livestock practices, manure, land application, manure storage, manure processing, livestock dietary manipulation, and livestock housing techniques. These are the issues that I looked at this. But if we broaden to environment, for instance, they looked also at low ammonia emission techniques, nitrification inhibitors, etc. The next slide, for instance, gives you a table with the impact of livestock dietary manipulation, with a synthesis table, with the different publications with their result. In green, you have a number of experiments that were done and have a positive impact on methane reduction, and other publications that not necessarily show a positive impact, but show that there is no effect. Hopefully there was none with negative effect, which is quite nice to read as well. So this was the example for livestock dietary manipulation. On other aspects, this can be seen as well. And I think the last slide I wanted to show you, as there was, I think, a question in the chat actually about possible support. You know that under the Common Agricultural Policy, there are practices that eco schemes under the Common Agricultural Policy can support. It's under the management of the management authorities in the member state. It has to be part of the strategic plans to implement the Common Agricultural Policy in the countries or in the regions. But you have here examples of practices, and you see, for instance, that feed additives. We heard about the 3-NOP, feeding, anaerobic digestion for manure management, manure spreading techniques. So there are a number of measures that can be useful into the objective of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and to some extent decarbonization of dairy production that are listed here. And I think the previous speaker, the last cooperative, included these issues about the eco schemes and the CAP possible support for these actions. This is it, the last. Thank you for your attention. And I'm sorry, I will have to leave for a mission, so I'm not sure I will be able to stay much longer for the rest of the workshop. Thanks.
Don't worry, Charles. You have done your job very effectively, I say. So thank you for this general landscape of the research, actions and tools put in place by European Commission. So we are going to look a little bit more in a couple of projects to understand how it works in a daily basis and what are the real outputs that can offer to this purpose. So first one, Shareq, thank you for putting on your camera. Shareq Mohd Nazir is the scientific project manager of the project Repair. And Shareq, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. So I'm Shareq Mohd Nazir. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering here at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, Sweden, and I'm presenting the project that I'm coordinating, Repair, which is funded within the Horizon Europe framework. I will start with a small introduction, and owing to time, I will also keep the presentation short. First of all, the role of non-CO2 greenhouse gases in global warming. As you can see here, methane and nitrous oxide has contributed quite a lot, even relative to carbon dioxide. So if you see, if carbon dioxide has contributed approximately to 0.8 degree rise in temperature, methane and nitrous oxide have resulted in contributing approximately 0.6 degree rise in temperature. And I think one of the main things with these non-CO2 greenhouse gases is that they have a higher global warming potential associated with them. What is Repair catalyzing? We are catalyzing to mitigate, to abate, or to remove the non-CO2 greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. And agricultural sector is one of the major contributions to methane and nitrous oxide emissions. And what we are targeting is catalyzing. If we can avoid this path of increase in the emissions from the agriculture, but rather implement technological solutions so that we are on this path to achieve the climate targets. Why now? It is because the European Union aims to achieve the climate neutrality by 2050. European Commission have also indicated in the Fit for 55 plan that will include the non-CO2 greenhouse gas removal from agricultural sources in pathways between 2030 and 2050 to achieve climate neutrality. And removing non-CO2 greenhouse gases from the atmosphere or diluted sources will accelerate the process of achieving net zero emission targets. And I think it will also accelerate thereafter achieving the negative emissions. Some of the expected outcomes from Repair is to increase the knowledge on plausibility of removing the non-CO2 greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. We want to raise awareness on the effects of non-CO2 greenhouse gases on the earth warming. We want to develop technologies and develop the proof of concept for technologies to address the effects of non-CO2 greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, we want to investigate the techno-economic aspects of the technologies. Just limiting the scope of Repair project, we are focusing on technologies for non-CO2 greenhouse gases, that is methane and possibly nitrous oxide. Methane emissions stemming from the fossil fuel value chain are excluded from this project, and other emissions with methane concentration higher than 1% are also excluded from the scope of this project. So we're focusing on technologies that can contribute to capture, concentrate, and use or dispose of emissions either from or natural resources or in the atmosphere. And then we are also trying to see if there are some synergetic effects of integrating carbon dioxide capture, removal, or conversion with the proposed technologies. Our ambition in this project is to prepare ground for large-scale non-CO2 greenhouse gas removal from non-fossil sources. And we want to develop the proof of concept, that is to achieve technology readiness level 3 to 4 for technologies to remove methane and possibly nitrous oxide from dilute non-fossil sources. That means having concentration of methane less than 1% and evaluates an impact on the environment. We are also identifying the plausibility of upscaling technologies in real conditions and trying to consider technological, environmental, economic, social, and policy compatibility while doing so. And of course, the agriculture sector has been identified to be the first adopter of these technologies, since it is one of the largest contributors of methane, nitrous oxide emissions, and also the methane concentration that appears in the emissions from the agricultural sector is having higher concentration than the methane concentration in ambient air. These are some project details. The project is running for 4 years. It started on 1st October 2022. We finished our first reporting period now in March 2024. The project runs until 30th September 2026. We have 9 partners in this project spread across Europe. As you can see here, I'm not going to go to all of them. There are 2 technology routes that we're investigating in Repair. First, let us see what are the emission sources that we are mainly targeting. It's the enteric fermentation, that is the methane that is emitted from barns or ventilation stables. We're also focusing on methane that can be emitted from the management service, manual management, and also the methane that is present in ambient air. And then in repair, we are the first type of technology that we are considering is the catalytic conversion technology, where you convert your methane into CO2 and possibly nitrous oxide into nitrogen and oxygen. And then what you get out is the air without methane and possibly nitrous oxide. And then the second type of technology that we are developing is a separation technology, where you capture or concentrate the methane coming from these sources. And then what you get out is the air without CH4, and you also capture the methane from these sources. And this methane can be used as an energy source. An alternative is also to capture and concentrate with conversion of methane and nitrous oxide into methanol. And then what you get out is air without methane and nitrous oxide. So these are the two types of technologies that we are developing in repair. And of course, we will also check the possibility of integrating these technologies with the existing direct air capture of CO2 processes to remove all the 3 greenhouse gases potentially. So if we convert, for example, if we convert methane to CO2 here, then that CO2 can also be captured in the direct air capture process. The approach in this project is we are identifying materials and developing proof of concept. So far in the first 18 months, we have already identified the catalyst that can convert methane at low concentrations, and we have also identified sorbent materials that can concentrate methane from these low concentration sources. What we are focusing now is trying to demonstrate the proof of concept of these technologies in our labs. We are focusing on process design and optimization for the technologies. And of course, so far in the project, we have developed a 0D model to screen suitable sorbents for methane separation. And then this model is already now being used for technologies to remove nitrogen from biomethane. And I suggest you to contact the team in Utrecht University who has developed this model. Then we have again, the Utrecht University has an existing 1D model for vacuum temperature swing adsorption process that they are trying to modify and suit the methane separation process as well. Then following that, we're going to identify the techno-economic and environmental potential. And here the main things is to calculate the cost, that is euro per ton CO2 equivalent avoided or removed. And we'll also do the life cycle assessment in the next phase of the project. And then the project also includes integrated assessment modeling. And of course, here we want to study the potential of non-CO2 greenhouse gas removal technologies in the context of the current policies, the national determined targets, the national net zero emission targets, and the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement. And we will also perform a cost-benefit analysis of having these technologies in the future energy scenario versus not having these technologies in the future energy scenario. And then, of course, we are also trying to consider the conditions for upscaling and future implementation. And we are very happy that we have partners like Valio and Agro-alimentarias in our project, where they provide continuous feedback in all the steps or in early stages of technology development. But we also get a lot of input on the conditions in farms that will enable the upscaling and future implementation of this technology. So we are designing our technologies based on the conditions in farms right now. I should also highlight some other ongoing efforts in this topic among the partners. There is a project in Sweden called MGM Negev, where we are also focusing on identifying the potential of removing this greenhouse gases from the agricultural sector, where we collaborate with the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences and Uppsala University in this project. Then there's a project at SINTEF called the Equivalent Carbon Dioxide Removal. The Norwegian Continental Shelf, a driver for climate positive Norway, again coordinated by SINTEF. And then, of course, you have already heard about the several efforts that Valio is taking to mitigate these methane emissions. And then I thank you for your attention. If you have if you need any further information, you can put it in the chat.
Okay, Shareq, thank you for sticking to your time, and you have helped us to catch up a little bit of the delay we have. Yes, remember that there is also the web of the project in the chat, and you can exchange ideas also with Shareq during this presentation. Okay, so we are moving to the next project, that it is Project Visionary, and We have here Dionisio, that it is the coordinator of the project. So Dionisio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Could you confirm you are seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So I will present rapidly this project in which the organizers of the webinar, the Spanish Organization of Agricultural Cooperatives, are also participating. And it is a project that is very much complementary to the previous one because it adopts a perspective from the social sciences. So I think it's a good way to see how different approaches could contribute to the same goal. Visionaries. Okay, Visionaries' aim is to contribute to the transition towards a more sustainable food system by promoting actions, practices taken by the food actors, from farmers to consumers, that are more aligned with the sustainable criteria. And in particular, we pay attention to the barriers that are preventing or are conditioning actors' decision-making in relation to the adoption of these more sustainable practices. We are dealing with farmers, we are working with farmers, but also with consumers and other actors in the middle, processors, retailers. It is a project that adopts a farm-to-fork approach, so that we are dealing with the whole value chain. And it is very much aligned or targeted to the design of future policies that are more able to really promote the adoption of these more sustainable practices by the different actors engaged in the value chain, because we know that there are some policies, standards, and regulations that are in many cases acting as barriers, preventing farmers and other food actors to make more sustainable decisions. We are 13 partners from 8 countries. You have on the top the Spanish Organization of Agri-Food Co-ops. I will not go into the details of the structure and the links of the work packages, but I would like to emphasize a couple of things. First, we are analyzing and we are addressing both public and private interventions. On the one hand, public interventions in the domain of agri-environmental policies, working with farmers, and also private interventions undertaken by other food actors, cooperatives, retailers, processors, in order to contribute to the design of more sustainable business models. And another point of relevance for us is that we are working also with this triangle made of scientists, scientific evidence, decision makers, policymakers, and stakeholders that are also policy actors, in order to understand in concrete settings revolving around specific topics how these relationships could be improved in order to contribute together to this transition. This is a complex project in which we are dealing with a number of case studies that they are grouped in these thematic clusters. Some of them are related, as I told you, with the policy domain, in which we are working with farmers in terms of climate change. I will go back later to this point. Biodiversity, but also collective water management. You have in green, in this case, the partners that are the countries in which these case studies are being carried out. There are also, as I said, private interventions, more value chain, with a more value chain approach we are addressing in order to better explore how to build more sustainable business models in the foods value chain. Some of them are analyzing the whole value chain revolving around specific topics, products, or settings. You have here some examples of what we are doing. One of them in Spain is precisely about the sustainable dairy cooperative. I will explain a bit later. We are working with retailers in order to undertake some experiments in real settings in order to understand better consumer choices when they are presented information differently. And we will conduct a consumer survey in 7 countries in order to better understand the main factors conditioning their purchase decisions. In other cases, we have addressing some analysis with a more systemic approach. One of them is about plant-based protein transition in 4 countries, and also the organic transition, also in 4 countries, in which we are also dealing in this later case, the organic, we are more focused on public procurement. And at the top, you can see the topics that in which the 16 science policy interfaces we have established in the 8 countries are revolving around. So now go directly to the more dairy related research. I will shortly explain the 2 main case studies we are dealing with in this sector. One which is carried out by the Spanish Organization of Agricultural Cooperatives, and the other one is carried out by the Universities of Trento and Copenhagen, although I will mostly concentrate on the first, the University of Trento, because they have already some preliminary findings. As for the Spanish case study, the topic is the decarbonization of a cooperative milk. Here we are, our colleagues are working with the Krum cooperative, which is selling Unicla milk, which is in Spain the first milk that certifies its carbon neutrality, because the cooperative is totally offsetting the equivalent CO2 emissions from both packaging and the own milk production by restoring burned forest in the country. This is a cooperative that is in the region of Galicia, probably you know, it's in northwestern Spain. It's a cooperative that is very much engaged in many projects and initiatives revolving around the sustainable development of the region. But besides this zero carbon milk, the cooperative is also working in the realm of the diet of dairy cows in order to improve the nutritional composition in 2 aspects. First, regarding its impacts on consumers' health, in particular regarding the decrease of diseases, but also to reduce its environmental impacts, in particular the carbon footprint of this milk. What we are doing, or what our colleagues are doing, is to better understand how this initiative is having impacts upstream and downstream in other food actors' practices and decisions. I mean, adopting this value chain approach, how this is connected to the way this transformation is carried out by, on the one hand, farmers that are providing the milk, but also the retailers and clients that are also modifying their practices in order to make a better use or better valorize this milk. The second study is more focused on farmers, this is which is led by the University of Trento in Italy, and in this case, our colleagues are analyzing farmers' preferences for alternative carbon farming payments. The main objective is to better understand farmers' preferences for 2 modalities of subsidiation schemes. On the one hand, action-based schemes, that is, schemes in which farmers are paid for undertaking, for carrying out a number of actions that are supposed to produce a positive environmental impact, versus results-based subsidiation schemes in which farmers are paid for the outcomes, for the environmental additionality they are able to create, adopting a number of practices they believe that are the most efficient in order to obtain these outcomes. Or in the middle, I mean, how to combine these 2 approaches, knowing that the immense majority of agri-environmental schemes now adopt the first modality, are action-based schemes. Also, they are analyzing what farmers prefer regarding schemes in which they are paid by the results they obtain directly from public agri-environmental schemes, by public policies, CAP tools, versus the modality or the option to be paid directly by the buyers of the credits, the carbon credits they are able to produce with this carbon farming practices, and also to analyze which are the effects on these farmers' preferences regarding their expectations, their risk and ambiguity aversion, or the way farmers perceive their capacity to really implement the innovation, the changes that are needed to obtain this environmental outcome. Our colleagues are obtaining some preliminary outcomes, but just to address two of them. First, interestingly, farmers appear to be willing to move from the dominant approach of action-based schemes to result-based subsidization schemes, which is, if it is so, if we mainstream this modality, it would be a revolution in the way agri-environmental payments are designed in all around Europe. And a second preliminary finding is that farmers seem not to have strong preferences between the two modalities of participation in these results-based schemes. That is, between these payments directly from public interventions, CAP interventions, versus the income they could obtain from buyers looking for carbon credits. So these are some preliminary outcomes that they will develop, and they will also carry out a similar analysis in Denmark in the coming months. So with these two examples, I shown you some of the interventions that are related to the public policy domain, this one, and the previous one, that of the Unicla milk that belongs to a private intervention. So I stop here. You have here the coordinates of the projects and the website, so I will be happy to respond to any question on the chat. Thanks, Juan, for inviting us to participate.
A pleasure, Dionisio. Thanks for your intervention. Okay, it seems we have been quite optimistic in the agenda, so we have some kind of great delay, but in any case, we are finishing the visit for the current situation of the journey of the defossilization. So let's take a look on the opinion from the value chain initiatives, not only from the cooperative sector, but from the overall industry. So we can start with Food and Drink Europe, that you know that it is the European organization that represents food industry in Europe. We have Lena Gerard, that is going to present the vision of the organization about this topic. So Lena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Do you see my screen and do you hear me as well?
Yes, we can see you. Not in presentation mode, but we can see it.
Okay, I'll try to do it. Is it better now?
No, you have to. Okay, yes, now.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll try to be fast in view of the time, but thank you very much for having me. I'll try to summarize in 5 minutes our FoodDrinkEurope vision on climate and scope 3 more specifically. So as you were saying, Juan, and very briefly, we are the organization of the European food and drink manufacturing industry based in Brussels. As part of our membership, we have the EU national federations for food and drink processing industries. We also have different sectors, including dairy, but many others, and a few companies that you can see on the slide. So this is just to give you a brief overview of who we are. Obviously, all our members have their own visions, their own commitments or targets around decarbonization, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, but we also tried as a sector organization to build our own action plan to support our membership and to drive policy change at a European level. So we published last year our action plan for sustainable and resilient food systems. It's quite a few pages, but this is all summarized on this slide with these 5 key areas or 5 key policy asks for the next European mandate. Climate and decarbonization can fall under each of these. We need more investment, we need more support for innovation, we need to boost trade and secure supply, build better regulation, and improve the governance and coordination at EU level. That's in brief what we are asking for the next mandate. As I was saying, climate does fall under all of these 5 main areas. We also tried to develop well, aspirational targets for our sector. Obviously, as an organization, we don't have full control over these targets, but that's at least guidance for us as a sector to live by and to evolve by. So the first one would be net zero carbon food chain by 2050 and the contribution to the 55% reduction for the emissions by 2030. We also have a target on food waste, on which some of my colleagues work on, and the food losses along the food supply chain. A target on deforestation-free food supply chains, and finally around sustainable farming and all our commodities to be sourced from sustainable farming. I'll focus a bit more on this last point because that's the main part of my job here within FoodDrinkEurope. I'm manager for agriculture and economic affairs, so very much driving the agriculture work stream and therefore scope 3 for agriculture. So based on all these targets, we have a few actions that are being done and that are ongoing. A net zero roadmap, mainly focusing on scope 1 and scope 2. In the coming time, we'll look at scope 3 to have recommendations, baseline assessments for our sector. On food waste, we also have quite some material. And finally, as I was mentioning on sustainable farming, that's something that we are working on now. We published a few months ago a discussion paper on funding the transition to more sustainable agriculture. Why we chose to focus on funding more specifically, because that was just the question that was always coming back, the fact that we miss investment to finance the transition to more sustainable farming and food systems. Questions around who should pay for it, how can the existing available pots of money be better used at national and EU level. So that's something that we looked at in the past month with partners and experts at Antisis. Maybe diving into the discussion paper, just to give you a bit more concrete overview of what we've been doing. We looked at the challenges and the solutions that exist at EU level for the sustainable transition for farming. We also did an economic analysis, how much it would cost for all farms in the EU to transition to what would be a sustainability farm. And after having figured out this cost, we looked at different funding mechanisms, so existing ones like the cap, obviously, but also things that haven't been explored as much yet, and I'll dive into it very briefly in a second. For the cost of transition, our economic experts found out, based on soil health more specifically, so not taking into account lots of other factors like methane emissions, for instance, but really based on improving soil health, it would cost around 28 to 35 billion euros to transition all farms to sustainability levels for the first year of the transition. This is really, well, this has limitations, obviously, this economic analysis, but it really gives us an estimation which quite aligns with existing EU figures. For example, the European Commission found out or estimated that we're losing currently 50 billion euros per year because of soil degradation. So we can more or less compare these two figures, even though obviously this is based on different data, but that's really helpful moving forward and analyzing the different funding mechanisms that we would need to transition to more sustainable farming systems. So once we found out this cost, we also looked at different funding mechanisms. The question who pays obviously came up very often in our interviews with farmers, with researchers, with food processors, banks as well. And these are, we have a few buckets of ideas or concepts that could be explored to enhance the funding mechanisms that already exist at EU or national level. So we have the cap, but we also have funding from the private sector, questions around prices for consumers, about applying the polluter pays principles to agricultural emissions, and one that we very much like around public-private partnerships and how to enhance the synergies that already exist between the public sector and the private sector around decarbonization and financing the sustainable transition. I won't take too much time around this study, but we also finished with a few policy considerations, which are not ours, but that are to explore with policymakers, with stakeholders, and also for us internally as FoodDrinkEurope. What would we need in terms of policies in the next mandate to, well, support the transition to more sustainable farming systems? So we had in our interviews again with farmers and other actors ideas around the evolution of the CAP to better drive the performance, digitalization of EU farms, and well, more academic research and primary data collection. That's something that came back very often. I'll stop here in view of the time, but if you want to reach out and get to know more about our different activities around climate scope 3, do feel free.
Thank you, Lena. Yes, we have to move quickly to the next presentation, but I would suggest to put in the chat the reference for the document that you mentioned whenever it will be public, and I think it would be interesting for the attendance. Thanks again, Lena. So finally, thank you, Jolien, for put your camera on. I think it is quite interesting, this initiative in Belgian sector, because it is an inter-branch initiative that brings together different stakeholders of the value chain. So Jolien, explain us a little bit more about your initiatives within MILB. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to be quick as well. So we start to explain what is Milk BE. So it's the Belgium dairy sector that we represent, and the two important links in the dairy sector, which means the farmers, here represented by the three largest farmers organizations in Belgium, and the dairy industry represented by the Federation of the Dairy Industry, based at CBL. So together we form Milk BE since 2019. And if we talk about sustainability, we started before, but it was not formally or in Milk BE because it didn't exist yet. But we started in 2014 with our sustainability monitoring with the three links in the dairy chain, which means on farmer level, the transportation towards the dairy industry, and then in the dairy industry itself. So we wanted to take our responsibility, and we always say it was our license to produce, to become more sustainable. So we now for a decade, we make an inventory of the initiative and measure their progress in the dairy sector. And it's also very important for sensibilization purposes. So you see all the themes that we have. In total, we had 35 possible initiatives if we talk on farmer level. Nowadays, we have 42, and each dairy farmer is audited by an independent organization each 3 years. So an auditor is really visiting the farmer each 3 years on farm. And we have a very high participation rate, almost 100%. So if you look at the evolution, so as I said, we started in 2014, and the average Belgian dairy farmer took 9.4 initiatives of the possible 35. And over the years, you see a nice progress, even though these initiatives are voluntary. And nowadays, 10 years later, we can talk about 22.6 initiatives out of the 42 because we added some initiatives along the way. So that's a very nice progress. We can look in detail in all the 42 criteria, but I have some examples here. So for the green energy via solar panels, biomethanization, or even a wind turbine, we see that nowadays 52% of the Belgian dairy farmers produces their own green energy. In 2014, it was only 22%. For example, it's an initiative we added last year's. 13% of the Belgian dairy farmers calculate their individual carbon footprint. And if we look at the use of alternative water sources, we see 10 years ago it was 28%, and nowadays it's 56%. We also focus on, for example, feed efficiency and the use of byproducts. So 65% in 2023 used byproducts of the food industry. For example, products used to produce beer, very famous in Belgium, but also potato peels, and also some examples of of animal welfare, longevity and replacement rate, or for example, 66% has cow brushes in the stables. As I said, we measure it throughout the chain. So we also have some numbers for the dairy industry, the Belgian dairy industry as well. And if you look, for example, on a period of 10 years, per liter of transformed milk in the Belgian dairy industry, we see that, for example, the CO2 emissions of the transformation of the milk is reduced by 24% over those 10 years. The energy consumption with 22%, water consumption 29%, and we see also a very hard focus on the use of alternative water sources, so the reuse of water. And we can say that 34% of the water use comes from these alternative water sources. But we have launched the end of last year a new monitoring system for on farm level, because over a decade we saw the number of challenges grow, but we also saw the resilience of the sector and the appetite, as we can say, to really move forward. So we wanted that our sustainability monitoring, who was 10 years old, still would provide the support, information and guidance for dairy farmers, for Belgian dairy farmers. And an add-on was the digitalization. So we went for a future-proof system to reduce administrative burden, but still collect a lot of data that can be shared in a correct and transparent way. And this data also gives the possibility to, for example, the dairy industry, but also for us as a dairy sector, to stimulate the efforts and reinforce our positive image. So we created an application that collects quantitative data. So we looked at all the other databases that were already there and where we can find some interesting data, maybe calculate some key figures so that the farmer has more data to see how there's also a benchmark provided of the sector, so he can see how he is moving towards becoming more sustainable and where he stands in comparison to other farmers. So we collected more quantitative data. Also, we added an important key topic, which is methane emissions, the reduction of methane emissions, more data on animal welfare, and, for example, also data on permanent pasture for carbon sequestration. Here's an example for the methane emissions, because in Belgium, specifically in Flanders, in one of the two big regions, we see a high focus of the government towards methane reduction. So that's why we added this team with all the possible measures that a farmer can take And then on the other hand, we want to focus as a sector on the individual carbon footprinting. We do every 5 years on a sector level a calculation done by a university for the carbon footprint of raw milk, and we see a 30% reduction over 20 years. But now we feel that we have to take the next step, which is working more on individual level, because it's very important to have those analysis and also to take action and move forward on individual level, and also take into account the ecological and economic aspects. We have 2 regional tools for that. It's called Climatic and Deceit, but we also have some dairy industry or dairy companies who use Cool Farm tool for their dairy farmers. And here's an example of the calculations that can be done. It's in Flanders of the carbon footprint of 1 liter milk, which apparently we in Belgium are very low in that number. And then to end my presentation, we launched a sustainability charter as Milk BE with a clear vision of the dairy sector. We launched it in March, I think. We say that sustainability for us as a dairy sector is our priority, and we want to collaborate in the chain, which is key. We want to put the whole sector in motion, and not only the top 10%, for example, of the best farmers, but the whole sector has to move. And we work with a no one-size-fits-all solution. So if everybody does something, it has more impact than some farmers in a strict way. And as I said, those individual climate scans for dairy farmers provide a customized solutions, and it's very important for us. But it's a necessity to have a clear and legal framework, of course, and a clear future perspective from our government. We also have clear commitments from every link in the dairy chain. For us as a dairy federation, we want to have a dialogue with other partners in the agri-food chain, with the feed sector or with retailers. The agricultural organizations will push the farmers on communication level and awareness level, help them improve their management, and provide the research and innovation that is necessary for that. And last but not least, the dairy industry has 2 clear commitments. 1, to support the dairy farmers with certain programs or initiatives to become more sustainable, and also push for the individual climate scans and the implementation with their farmers. So our sector approach to become more sustainable is actually a broad view on sustainability. It's not only reduction of carbon footprint in the scope 3, but also animal welfare, more efficiency or more efficient use of resources. It is our program, and further on our charter is supported by the whole dairy sector, which is very important. We have a standard way of calculating those criteria, those definitions, which make it more comparable along all the Belgian dairy farmers, and we have a benchmark on sector level. The sustainability monitor makes it easy and safe to share data, and we have the tools and incentives to provide guidance and direction for farmers to become even more sustainable. And those data is very important for us as a sector to monitoring the efforts, provide also incentives, for example, for dairy companies, and to communicate on that. And we have a website, and we communicate on those numbers of the sustainability monitoring very, very often. We have each year a fact book, a symposium, farm visits, to learn, to say to our stakeholders how we are moving on based on facts and figures as a Belgian dairy sector.
Thank you, Jolien. Thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you all of you for the attention. Sorry for the half an hour delay and for interfere in your worth lunch. So we are going to close the event with some brief words from Ramon Armengol, that it is the representative from Spanish Agri-Food Cooperatives and member of the governing board. I hope to see you again in new initiatives linked with sustainable transition in food sector and the involvement of cooperatives. So please, Ramon, the floor is yours for the closing words. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ramon. I am a farmer, a pig farmer, member of the Board Council of Spanish Agri-Food Cooperatives. For the last year, and until a few months ago, I have been the proud president of COGECA. During this mandate, I have had the opportunity to learn a lot about the incredible work that our cooperatives do in European territory and in agriculture and livestock sectors. Sincerely, I am envious of the European dairy sector. I believe you are the livestock sector to imitate. Many thanks. We have seen a simple in this webinar with examples from Finland, Ireland, Denmark, Italy, France, and Spain, and even beyond our continent. Many thanks to all of the cooperatives for participating and for generosity and transparency with which they have told you about their decarbonization strategies. Cooperatives are the link between the markets and farmers. They are also the link between regulation and practical application on their farms. Unlike other actors, we cannot transfer the commitments of the green transition to the next link in the chain. The decisions we take will have a direct impact on the farms of our members, who are also our owners, our allies, and our boss. Our cooperatives are absolutely dependent of their economy viability. At the same time, our farmers absolutely depend on us to help them become sustainable. By guiding them in the application of the science-based techniques, we help to them to become sustainable. We have to guide them in the implementation of science-based targets in a planned, progressive way and with follow-up and technical advice. Nobody else is going to do, we know that. And above all, no one else will do better than us. That in why we ask for understanding and support. We need European instruments to help us with this work for farmers. We need to strengthen our role in the market because our voice in this transition must be heard as powerful than big agri-food players. We need practical instruments that allows us to transfer the most relevant proven technology to our farmers. We also need research to cope the practical problems, the decarbonization. In short, and this webinar demonstrated, we are not running away from our responsibility, but we need your help to achieve it. Many thanks to all of you for the collaboration in this event, especially the speakers, moderators, COGECA, and our colleagues from the French and Irish cooperatives. See you soon, dear colleagues.